Hello everybody, welcome back. I wanted to make a video today about one of my Quantel paint boxes. This specifically is the Paintbox Express, which you saw a while ago, how things are developing with it. Just to be clear, this is the one that I converted from a picture box, not the one I repaired. This is also the one I want to get working with the Quantel camcorder, but I've still had no success on that front, and trust me, I have been trying. Anyway, as soon as I got my first paint box last year, I'd been wanting to replace the hard disk in it for some kind of flash or SSD drive. And I had hoped that a SCSI to compact flash drive that I removed from the Sovereign Phaco machine, I don't know whether some of you remember me doing a teardown on that, that had a compact flash to SCSI drive in it. I hope that might have worked with the paint box, but for some reason the paint box really just doesn't like it. So instead I opted to buy a specific product which was designed for replacing SCSI hard disks and using an SD card. So I'm just going to show you that now. It's all installed. So I'm just going to open up the paint box and give you a bit of a tour of what's actually happened. Okay, that's a slightly better view. So we are now inside. We've got the main paint box PCBs up here, and then down here we have this space where this old Fujitsu drive used to live. Now what this board is a SCSI to SD board. These are an Australian made board that are purpose designed to replace SCSI disks with SD cards in old vintage computers. So it's perfectly suited for doing what we're doing here, and the good thing is they are really configurable as well. Now I did buy one of these back in January from Amiga Kit and Lehman Computing. They have an operation here in the UK, but sadly it's taken me 6 months to actually get a working one due to Amiga Kit and Lehman Computing being, well, basically a useless bunch of morons. I really would not recommend using them for anything at all. You have been warned. But thankfully a working board arrived the other day, and it's all configured and it's all working. So as you can see, the board plugs in place of a SCSI 3.5-inch disc using the normal 50-pin SCSI 1 or SCSI 2 cable. There's a Cypress system on a chip which emulates the SCSI drive and uses a micro SD card for storage. So there I'm just using a 16GB SanDisk, and I believe you can use up to 32 gigabytes in this particular model. Now the SCSI to SD board is a well thought out product for tasks like this. It's configured over a USB link just here, which talks to a small Windows app to actually configure it. It's highly flexible as it allows you to emulate up to 4 SCSI devices. Now these are not 4 SCSI LUNs under one SCSI ID, but actual SCSI IDs. So you can split up your SD card into separate hard disks and an MO drive if you wish, or you could have 4 hard disks, or you could have 3 hard disks and a CD-ROM drive. You can fully customize the emulated drive vendor parameters like makes, models, firmware revisions, just in case your host hardware is expecting something very specific on the SCSI port. Okay, so let's close this paint box up and I will plug into the USB and I will show you the configuration program. Okay, so if we have a look at the configuration utility, I've already got it loaded up. It's already plugged in with USB, and it's already identified the card and the capacity of the SD card that is in. Now to pull the settings out of the device, you need to click on load from device, and that will load in all the settings from the card, and I'll be able to show you my configuration. Okay, that's completed. So we've just got some basic settings here. I've not needed to change any of these. They're all just as default. Device 1 is currently disabled. Now if that was enabled, that would be on SCSI device ID 3. It would be a magneto-optical drive. It starts at sector 0. We've got 1024 bytes for the sector size. That's the sector size of the emulated drive, I should say, and the sector count is the number of sectors it's going to use on the SD card, and then the total device size. And as I said, you can configure all the vendor and product IDs. So I've just got this emulating the MO drive that I picked up with all of the Quantel Paintbox stuff. So that matches perfectly. On device 2, that is SCSI ID 0, and that's emulating a hard drive. And we can see here that the sector start point is after the MO drive. So that is a just over 4 GB drive that I've got configured there, and that is a complete mirror of my Fujitsu drive that actually came out of this machine. So you can also have 2 other devices set up. They're not used at the moment. I'm just using device 1 and device 2. Now, as I mentioned, the MO drive is disabled as I don't actually need it at the moment, and the Paintbox will always to default to boot from it if it's there. So that's why that is going to stay disabled at the moment, to stop it booting from the MO drive. I do actually have a working image on this drive here anyway, so I don't actually need to boot from the MO drive. It's really just for backup purposes. Now, one issue I've had with all of my Paintboxes is something that really does confuse me. I've tried to think about how a user would create a new working system. Obviously, I've been swapping and changing hard disks around here, and I have to think about how to actually reinstall the whole operating system and all that sort of stuff. I had expected that if you had a working system, say, and your hard drive failed in your Paintbox, that you would just be able to open it up and take out the busted hard disk, replace it with a new one, and then boot off the MO disk, which is supplied with the Paintbox, where you'd be able to then go into the software and format the new hard disk and then copy the system over. And there are actually options within the software to do that. There's drive initialization options, and options to be able to copy the system over from the MO to the hard disk. But whenever I've installed a blank disk and then booted from the MO drive, it gets partway through, throws some errors about not finding a system disk, and eventually crashes and reboots in an endless loop. So I really don't know how you would set up a new system. The only way I've ever managed to do this is to actually copy an image of a working Paintbox drive onto the new drive that I want to use. I've never been able to format or initialize a new disk. To this day, that mystery remains completely unsolved. So with that in mind, I wasn't able to boot the system up off the MO disk and just initialize the new emulated drives which are on the SCSI 2 SD board. I actually had to copy a working image over onto the SCSI 2 SD board. Now, I did that from an image of this actual disk. That's why I've actually completely emulated to the exact sector size this hard disk on the SCSI 2 SD board. So I could then make an image of this disk and then copy it over onto the SCSI 2 SD board. Now, to do that, I actually had to take it out and plug it onto my PC, which has SCSI, and I used some Windows drive imaging software to actually copy the image data over. It's a bit of a shame that the SCSI 2 SD card doesn't actually allow you to mount the drives as mass storage devices under Windows. That would help a lot and would save you from plugging into another system just to copy the image data over from one drive to another. So this is all working just fine, and it boots up no problem at all. So what I'm going to do in the rest of this video is boot the system up, and I will show you some of the serial console. I've only briefly gone over some of the details of this, and there is quite a lot there, so I thought it might be interesting just to go through some of the commands that you can actually play with. Okay, so I've just got my serial console open on my computer. I'm just going to turn on the Paintbox. You have seen this before, I know. So this is currently in the EEPROM boot monitor. We've got some initialization of the floppy drive, and just here it's just loading in the system image from the hard disk, or the SD card as it is now. So I'll just let the system boot up, and then I will run through some of the console commands that we have access to. Right, that's it, the system is up. So we are into the serial console. There's no login required to get into this, it's just there all the time. Now there is a help system, which is a pretty comprehensive help system. These commands, these in a way, these work more like directories because there are often sub-menus below these as well. So there is quite a bit here. So what I'm going to do is just run through each of these options. Some I will just skip over because I know they're not really particularly interesting. There's some more interesting ones that I will go into a bit more detail about. So from here we can actually do further help. So if we have a look at auto verify, we can actually type help auto verify, and performs all the function of verify, but displays the test numbers and error states on the hex display on the CPU card. So that runs the verify command just here, but also displays data onto the hex port on the CPU card. Backlog is literally just a log of the stuff that actually appears on this console. Board is the baud rate of this console, and that is available up to 20,000 baud. So at the moment I'm running at 19,200, so it's pretty much maxed out, so I can't run any faster. Box list is a very large list of all of the text boxes that appear within the user interface. So anything that appears as text on the actual interface appears in there. I'm not going to run that one because there's over 2,000 items in there and it does take a little bit of time to display them all. Buffers, I can't remember what that one is. Interpreter, oh right, okay, the buffers, what the basically this command line here that I'm on, that is a buffer, and you are able to save the buffers into files and then run them as like batch files in a way. So that's what buffers are. Cache, so that allows you to disable or enable the on-chip cache of the 68040. Obviously that's only available on the paint boxes that have the 040 CPU 42 board. Coder, there's obviously some hardware options there. The coder system provides utilities for maintaining the EEPROM on the Coder 2 modules. I have no idea what that's for. Crash, that allows you to basically simulate a crash, and then you can see how the system deals with it. Cursor gives you some cursor options, and that is actually the cursor which is on the user interface. So there's a load of sub options there, so I can actually type in cursor and we actually have a sub menu there, so we can change various things on the cursors, and grids as well. Grids on the actual paint box allow you to define a grid that the pen snaps to. And to get back to the top level, you just type quit. Delay is a hardware option. So there's obviously some timing thing going on there. Help D-gate. If running on 68040 CPU card, enables mechanism which suppresses DMA during interrupt programs. Use with care. This command may stop otherwise valid software running. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. Diagnostics is a large set of diagnostic utilities to test all of the hardware in the system. provides facilities to examine, alter RAM, search for values, diagnostics for the 68450 DMA controller, sysbus. The sysbus is the Quantel's bus mechanism that they use between all of the separate cards. It's actually their own designed bus. Actually, I think we have to type in memory. Yeah, in a way, it's some of these options do work very odd. So it's just yeah, we are in memory. So we could do help examine. Oh, there's no help for examine. So help search. No help for search. Let's just try this. Yeah, there we are. Searches for the byte word or long value depending on the current mode, starting from the memory location and ending at location. So that it literally searches through memory for various things. So you can see that this menu does allow some quite low level operation. So let's just quit back to the top. Help DMAC. And that's DMA controller diagnostics. Download. Enables or disables port A of the 68681 serial chip for use as a download port. When enabled, this data is sent to the external serial port, is used as a character input and is designed to be used to load commands from a computer such as a VAX into the V series. This gives access to a more powerful editor and filing system than provided by V series. So there's obviously some kind of interface to allow you to connect these machines into a VAX. DPB, this option here, that is literally the actual Paintbox editing software itself, so you can't actually run that, it just says it's already running. So dummy help is just a dummy help thing, I'm not quite sure why that's there. Edit is editor buffer, so again this allows you to edit commands in this interface. DLD. Current state of the Ethernet download. Ethernet downloading of software by writing a field into NVR. NVR is non-volatile RAM. Applies only to V3 and subsequent monitors. So yeah, there's obviously I'm not really sure what that's for. Maybe it allows you to download part of the software via Ethernet rather than off the hard disk, maybe. Error, that all that does is just allow you to output the text errors that appear in this interface. It doesn't really do anything more than that. Exhib is some kind of mode which allows you to use it in some kind of exhibition environment. Obviously maybe it's running through some kind of demo or something. There's not a lot of information there. Exhibition options, yeah, not really much there. Exit we know about. Filer is quite an important one. Because this gives you access to all of the disk options. And there's a few other options in here as well. We have things like file types. Don't remember how to use it. So that's a list of all the file types that can be actually on the machine. File list, so this will literally allow us to list out all the files. So these are all of the files that are actually on this system at the moment. Delete directory, these are all sort of fairly obvious things. You can create directories. One thing you don't really have access to is you don't really have direct access to the actual file system itself, it seems. You all have to do it through this interface. So creates a file, delete's obviously going to delete a file, help, header, print out the header data, help, index file access. Submenu is used for accessing files in the index mode. I don't really know what that means. Keyed mode, again don't really know what that means. Link creates a link addressed by path containing link string. A link is a fragment of a path which may be used as a shorthand to shorten frequently used paths out. Right, okay, so it's like shortcuts on Windows. Format mail enable or mail disable. Disables the mail information messages to this machine. Mail enables tells the bridge processor that this machine is to receive all mail, no information messages. So any previous destination for disable, blah blah blah. Yeah, there's a mechanism in V-Series to be able to mail things between different systems, so it allows people to work more collaboratively. So they'll be connected via Ethernet. They can actually be connected by SCSI as well, I believe, and this mechanism would allow one user to mail, say, a picture from one machine to another. What else do we have here? Help, map mode. Again, don't really know what that is about. Oh, master. Debug remote command handling in module F8. Yeah, not really sure what that's about. Oh. Help. Oh, not again. Network dismounts are all disabled, blah blah blah. So yeah, you can have remotely mounted disks from other machines. Retype stations. List the known PictureNet stations, display area station, Ethernet address, station type. It's not going to show anything because there's no network at the moment. Utilities. That gives us some more options. So we have stuff like mount. This allows you to mount drives. Drives can actually list the drives that are actually on the system. So you can mount or unmount those. You can format, initialize, scan. You've got some caching right through. That'll be a caching option. File caching system, yeah. So there's a fair bit of stuff there. We also have help time. So it allows you to set the date and time. It took me a while to find that one. So if we quit back out to the main, fonts allow you to inform that the system that there is a font, so it loads it from the disk and actually installs it into a list of fonts which are available to the user. That's part of the buffer system, so you can actually create scripted things within this interpreter. F smash smashes the filters. Yeah, no idea. Gender is gender on other machines has meant what type of machine it is, but on this system it's not supported, so I'm not quite sure why that is. Glue, that's for the glue points. That is a user thing. When you're actually drawing, you can create little spots which are like glue on the screen that your pen can snap to, so that'll just be a way to help configure that. Heap will be a system thing. Current state of heap, yeah. Yeah. Right. Delay. Sets field interrupt delay. Each tick is worth 0.8 microseconds. Use with care. This command may stop otherwise valid software running. So yeah, I'll leave that one alone. If is going to be part of the interpreter, this interface. Index log. Index filing diagnostic. Okay, so that's a log of the file system. Interpreter is this particular interface. There's not really much in there. Help K. K filer diagnostics. I'm not really sure what this is. What K filer is. I don't really know. Count files. No, I don't know. Not really sure what that is for. Keyboard, KBD, that is allows you to change some keyboard options. Library. Viewing testing, the library files used for disk indexing, so that's more of the filing system. Sort of low-level file access. Link enters the InMOS link diagnostics, which enable data to be transferred to and from other Mavis CPUs across the InMOS link. Yeah, the InMOS links were actually used on the older paint boxes to talk to the floppy drive, so that might be what that is for. Nope. List. Buffers and commands. Yeah, this is just talking about stuff within the within this interface. Load, that's loading buffers. Log, that is a log of the buffers, I think. Login, now that's an interesting one. Login as owner Quantel. Format login and password allows the user to log in as owner Quantel and hence access protected commands. Now this is something that I've found really interesting, and yes, I have been trying to get in and I've not managed it. Somebody did mention that the passwords were often street names around their headquarters, and one of the passwords was Turnpike at one point, but I've also been told by somebody else that the passwords were regularly changed. So unfortunately I don't know what the password is to get in. So if I try and do log in, or torn puke, yeah, it does the same thing, it doesn't matter what you type in. Ugh. Yeah, doesn't do anything. Now I'll return to this when I get to some other commands. So let's just go back to help. So where were we? We had login, mbox. So that's probably something to do with menu box states. Yeah, it's going to be something to do with the user interface, I would imagine. Help. Memory, oh, we were in that earlier, weren't we? Yeah. Help menu. Enters the diagnostic menu. Help. Check. Macro check a box. No idea. Attempts to find a box with a given text and then pushes it. Yeah, no idea. M font. What's M font? Menu, disk-based menu fonts. Okay. I think that might be the font that it uses within the user interface, I think. Net access, that's obviously going to be something to do with the network, which isn't connected at the moment, so that's not really going to do anything. Next will be part of the interpreter system. NVR is the non-volatile RAM. So shows current NVR, NVR primary. So that's a dump of the primary non-volatile RAM. The secondary will be exactly the same because they are just, one is just a backup of the other. Owners. Maintaining and testing the owner system. So you can have different owners and users that can log into the Paintbox and have their own settings and files, and this interface allows you to control some of them. I've never really managed to make it work properly. So we've got default engineer Quantel, which is protected as we saw before under that login thing, and system. So there's obviously different levels of user on here. You can add new ones. So add owner name, so you can do add Dexter. No update control during read, set old. You get a lot of this thing trying to work with these paint boxes. You just have no idea what that means, or how to actually use these commands properly, because there's just literally no documentation for anything. Help create local or network owner file. Create local. Okay. Oh, now Dexter's appeared. Okay. Help special. What's special? Check the special owners. Check that all the special owners are in the local owner file and puts them there if they weren't. Also ensures that they have their standard privileges. For diagnostic use only should be preceded and followed by reconcile so that the net file gets used and updated properly. Okay. Yeah, okay. What else have we got in here? Owner's panel. Record replay panel. Number held in header field 32. Use command CLF0F32 to clear. There's obviously some extra bit of hardware. You could have some kind of record or replay panel that could plug into it, and presumably those are the commands to test it. Pick port protocol. Menu of the commands for testing the pick port. Remote access port can either be used to simulate receive commands in local mode or send commands to another machine. Yeah, not really sure what that's for. Print statement performs output to the terminal from which the interpreter is run. If the output list SS is missing, a blank line is output. Print. No. Yeah, okay. Understand that one. Protection. Set the command protection state. This is an interesting one and probably relates to the login. Turn on or off command protection. If command protection is on, protected commands will not execute. Default is protection on. A password is required to execute this command. And yes. Ah, no. So I think if I actually had the login for the special Quantel user, I think I might be able to actually use that protection command, but I can't. Variable printout. Print out the contents of variable VV p-bar print the value. Yeah, I'm not really sure that does it do anything? No. Quit. We know about quit. Recall. That's to do with buffers again. Help remote handler command queue. Yeah, that doesn't do anything. Help remove buffers again. Repeat, that'll be buffers. Run will be buffers. Save will be buffers. SCSI gives you access to some of the SCSI stuff. So we can tell it to go to a particular port. I do know about some of these commands, so I'm not going to go into all of them. There is two SCSI ports on the Quantel Paintbox, port A and port B, which gives you a total of 16 devices in total that can all be interconnected. The SCSI port was used on the earlier versions before they had Ethernet to actually connect multiple systems together and talk over SCSI, in addition to actually having their storage and hard disks and stuff. So port A0 is the local hard disk that's actually on this, so I can do, now I've set that, I can do capacity and it reports the capacity of the drive, inquire, and all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty simple stuff. You can issue probably SCSI format commands. TAC, these are special commands for the later version of the V series, which had the SCSI floppy drive. It uses a TAC FD235, which is a 3.5-inch high density floppy drive attached to a SCSI interface, and that's how that actually has a floppy drive in it. In the old version of the Paintbox, like on my earlier V-series system, it uses an InMOS transputer chip to actually provide an interface to the floppy drive, but not on this version. Security. Now this is interesting stuff, and I think I actually might have shown you some of this before. So this is where you actually create and add in the software options for a particular system. So you can actually add the software options in, and it stores them on the hard disk and enables options within the software. Now interestingly, you actually have options here called create, and if you actually do help create, it does actually say here create a password, create a serial number option, and this creates a password for the given serial number and option, and with the same expiry as the create password, the feature enabled by the password will be available when the software is restarted. And we also have serial buffer. Yeah, I'm not really sure what that is, but there is also a little bit of information here. See here, and passwords for other machines. The second type, known as buffer commands, are provided that floppy disk can be created by Quantel for Paintbox in the field. So I think what this actually allows you to do is actually create those passwords to enable software options, and you can actually use any Paintbox to actually do it, but you need access to those protected commands with the Quantel login to be able to access them. So that is something that I'm certainly going to be looking into in the future. Configure serial ports, serial. Serial show, so that's just how the serial ports are currently configured. S5. If running on 68040, CPU card turns on the sysbus write FIFO, used with care again, so more hardware options. Simple test on the SMD interface. Now I believe the SMD interface is something that you could use on the V series to actually access the hard disks that we used on the original Quantel Paintbox, which are those huge, great big 14-inch Winchester drives. The SMD interface is called a storage module device, and it's completely different to anything and predates any SCSI or anything like that. So I think there was obviously some kind of interface that you could plug onto these V-series systems to actually allow you to read and write to the old Quantel Paintbox system, which was the DPB 7000 system. So there's some commands there, but obviously they don't do anything because there's no SMD interface on this system. Controls sysbus, release sysbus again is the Quantel bus system between all the cards. So yeah, more hardware options. Switches. There's some information about the actual switches on the CPU card. So yeah, big long list of stuff there. So system bus diagnostics, set of functions which enable the user to test the various cards which make up Mavis. I believe Mavis is actually the code name, the internal code name for the V-series system. A little anecdote, I believe that Mavis is actually referring to Mavis from Coronation Street. Apparently they used to name the internal projects after characters within Coronation Street, which is a bit funny. So you do see references to various characters. So obviously anything in here is probably going to be fairly low level stuff, and probably not really worth fiddling with. Let's just have a look. Brush bus, no help. Okay. Less. There we are. Selects the brush bus port for testing. Subsequent read and write commands will access the brush bus port. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot in there. I'm not really much I'd know much about with it unless I was a Quantel engineer. Systems, print out system data and statistics. System yeah. Yeah, don't really know why any of that is. Timing, state of system timing without parameters command shows the current state of the system timing flag with parameters. Timing is off. Library fetch and save times. Okay, so that probably tells you how long it actually takes to do read and write times on the library. Interesting. Help trace, I think this is to do with buffers, buffer execution, yeah. Help TV sys. Changes the standard of the. It cannot be executed when the main software is running, and the machine must be restarted after a change of this standard. So it allows you to change between to PAL and NTSC. This command only works if a video out 2 card is fitted. I've got a video out 4, so I'm not quite sure what that's going to do. TV sys. Yeah, I'm not going to change it. Until variable, they're going to be to do with buffers. Verify. Performs comprehensive system diagnostic, system automatic checks. Verify. Quiet. Print out only error messages. Print full help and details during testing. Forces all tests irrespective of errors. Main store, disk store. So those are actually physical cards in the system. So those are actually going to test the actual cards that are actually plugged in. So we've got the size, that'll be the perspective card as well. Loop. So help is available for the following commands. Oh, I've started something. So DS will be disk store, MS will be main store. Something's failed. I don't know what that means. Failed testing LCK input paths. where they need some kind of input for that to be able to pass properly. Help version, software version details, yeah, Paintbox, video out card, video out 4, yep, no, VT420. Displays the current software version in the status line on VT420 type terminals. This command uses VT420 specific escape sequences and should not be used on other types of terminal. Yeah, oops, looks like I've VTR. Print debug about VTR. VTR is videotape recorder. Obviously the Paintbox has a serial port in, and you can actually operate things like Betacam machines automatically. So that's what that interface is all about. Now, can I actually reset terminal? Yeah. And that is pretty much it. There is quite a lot to see in there, to be fair, but most of it I have really no idea what it's for. Maybe one day I'll actually find out. Okay, I hope you found that one interesting, and if there's any progress made on the ramcorder, I'll certainly be making an update, but it is pretty slow going. Okay, thanks for watching everybody. See you on the next one.